voice of God calls us to awaken him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate our lives ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us when
Awake and ready.
Let's start with a prayer together. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
dearest friend,
beloved
God,
God,
great Master, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we bow before you. O Divine Mother, come into our hearts, plant the seed of true devotion, true dedication, single-pointed love of thee, and help us to share that love with others.
Peace.
Amen. Good morning, everyone. So we can see you and have a seat. We'll start with some music.
There lived a tender maid in a far-off country. The strangeness of this world made her sigh. Her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was, why? She saw the solemn clouds gathered watching a rainbow. The bright rays of their joy filled the sky. Her teachers explained it all wisely away, but still her heart wondered why. She saw the silent stars thrill the night with their gladness. They seemed some wondrous truth to imply. Her elders all slept, but the magic of light would wake her to ponder why. She saw a mother smile as she tended her baby. A widow weep that love had to die. The joy of new friends and the sadness of parting, all these made her ask God why. One night into her heart stole the secret of oneness, the bond not even time can untie. For love there possessed her and made her his own. In love she at last learned why.
Continue to meditate as you listen to these words from Affirmations for Self-Healing on our week's topic, devotion. No good is ever reached without devotion. No true success is achieved unless the heart's feelings are involved. Willpower itself is a combination of energy and feeling directed toward fulfillment. In the quest for God, the unfolding of the heart's natural love in the form of deep devotion is the prime requisite for success. Without devotion, not a single step can be taken towards Him. Devotion is not sentiment. It is the deep longing to commune with and know the only reality there is. Please affirm with me in an out loud, strong voice, claiming the attention of the conscious mind. With the sword of devotion.
With the sword of devotion.
I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion.
I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion.
With the deepest love.
With the deepest love.
I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresence.
I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresence.
Quieter in a normal speaking voice. With the sword of devotion.
With the sword of devotion.
I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion.
I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion.
With the deepest love.
With the deepest love.
I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresent.
I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresence.
And now in a whisper, taking it deeper into the subconscious mind. With the sword of devotion. I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion. With the deepest love. I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresence. Silently now, with the sword of devotion, I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion. With the deepest love, I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresence. Now broadcasting it up at the point between the eyebrows into the superconscious mind. With the sword of devotion, I sever the heartstrings that tie me to delusion. With the deepest love, I lay my heart at the feet of omnipresence. Please pray silently along with me. Beloved Father, Mother, God, I am thine alone. Let others seek thee or seek thee not. It matters not to my love for thee. Through all life's trials, my prayer is this alone. Reveal thyself. Oh, peace. Amen. Good morning. My name is Suryani. This is Keshava. Hello to everyone joining online. Hello. Our weekly topic from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, are, by thinking can we arrive at understanding. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. There are many places in the Gospels where we see Jesus in open conflict with the Pharisees. That is to say, with man-made as opposed to true mystical tradition. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 15, we see a good example of how they and he locked horns. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem came and asked Jesus, "Why do your disciples break our ancient tradition and eat their food without washing their hands properly first?" Jesus, after scolding them for their hypocrisy and observing lesser rules so carefully while ignoring the much more important ones, said, "Listen and understand this thoroughly. It is not what goes into a man's mouth that makes him common or unclean. It is what comes out of a man's mouth that makes him unclean." It wasn't that Jesus counseled against such wholesome practices as washing one's hands before eating. In an age, however, when lesser rules were given too much importance relative to the truly important observances, cleansing the heart of impure desires, for example, he emphasized the supreme importance of loving God and of communing with him. The Pharisees, the orthodox religionists of his day, in other words, had brought the true religion down to a level of intellectual hair-splitting. They mistakenly considered the way to understanding to lie through a minefield of definitions, which they tried to refine to ultimate exactitude. Jesus taught, however, that the intellect alone can never lead one to truth. Without love, indeed, there is no ultimate verity. Without fixity of purpose, born of the heart's devotion, the intellect wanders endlessly. It cannot settle for long on anything. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 2nd chapter, the intellect of those who lack fixity of spiritual purpose are inconstant, their interests endlessly ramified. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Hello again, everybody. So happy to get to share Sunday with you all. What a treat. I wanted to begin with Whispers from Eternity, which is perhaps no great surprise. This is the prayer demand for devotion. Please pray along silently with me. O Father, I hold my heart in my folded hands. Teach me to saturate my prayers with thy love. Give me the simple, sincere devotion towards thee of a child. Teach me to realize thee just behind the voice of my prayer. Teach me to feel thy breath flowing with my breath. Teach me to cognize thy presence in my emotions. Teach me to perceive thy wisdom in my understanding. Teach me to sense thy all-pervading life in my life. Oh, flood my senses with thy light. Oh, peace. Better put this somewhere else. I really enjoy a lot of Swami Ananda's Sunday service topics because they're these rhetorical questions and the answer is almost always so succinct. By thinking, can we arrive at understanding? No. That's it. But the whole, then, the joy comes in understanding why. And then, of course, as he explains in the reading, well, how can we then arrive at understanding? And what's fascinating is, like Sri Krishna says in the reading, those whose intellects lack fixity are endlessly entertained with varying ideas. And we can find this in all walks of life. We can find this, in someone who's a musician or someone who's a banker or someone who's an actor. We've all stumbled into these people who, lacking fixity of resolve and devotion of their heart, they flutter from one thing to the next, hoping to find the nectar of their own enjoyment in the next flower rather than where they currently are. And consequently, they end up actually going nowhere. They go in circles, but they end up progressing to no great depth in anything they do. And I don't know about you, but that sort of is a fearful proposition. If I think about putting out effort and intensity and energy and then realizing that I've frittered away myself on so many varying things that I haven't learned anything, that then, of course, brings me to the next question. Well, then how can we actually learn? How can we understand? How can we deepen ourselves? And the answer is in fixity of devotion, fixity of love, faith. It's interesting. Peter was sharing with me, I don't know from whence he heard this, but that apparently someone somewhere, sometime, said if you want repetition, date many people over and over and over. But if you want an adventure, stay with someone for your life. I thought that was a great example of this. That whenever you meet someone new, if you're in the dating pool, then you have to go through the same steps every time. Hi, I'm Keshava. Nice to meet you. Oh, we're smiling and we're trying to charm each other, and maybe we can go out for dinner. And it's fun and it's entertaining because it's new, but it's not actually deep. We're not really experiencing anything new. We're just sort of skating along the surface, testing out the waters to see if it will be a real match. And it's only after a long time that you can really begin to open your heart to somebody in a sincere and deep way. And it takes time, it takes vulnerability, it takes commitment. Isn't that so? That for a marriage to become deep, it requires commitment of the heart. It's not that it just happens accidentally, that you fritter around to 10,000 people and you find the one who you're going to be able to open your heart to. You have to decide, I'm going to open my heart to this person. I'm going to risk being hurt. I'm going to risk being vulnerable for the opportunity to discover what real love is, for the opportunity to discover who I am in a deeper way through this experience. And that is how a lasting marriage, I'm told, lasts. And I've seen it growing up at Ananda Village. I've seen marriages that develop and continue to mature and beautify and deepen until finally their marriage is a reflection of the divine romance. And it's a beautiful thing. But that outward symbol is just a reminder of what it requires of us in our own hearts. Each of us has a divine romance that we are singing to God. George will play the first movement from a sonata that Swami Kriyananda entitled The Divine Romance. And the title of the first piece is called God's Call Within. We can't find him frittering around to 1,000 wildflowers of outward entertainment. We have to go inside. We have to go to the flower of our own hearts and there go deep with commitment in the path that has been given to us. There are many ways, Michael and I enjoy a good laugh often. Friendship is such a charming gift that the divine has given us. Actually, as a side tangent, Yogananda said, friendship is the greatest possession. That's something worth meditating on. He said it's the greatest possession. How would you treat your greatest possession? With love and care, I should hope. But friendship is a great way to develop love and devotion of heart. But at any rate, so Michael, I'm grateful for your friendship. But one thing that we get a good laugh out of many times is this repetitive question of how can I develop devotion? Because if you read Yogananda's teachings, if you read Swami Kriyananda's teachings, there's this big emphasis on devotion. And Christ in the Bible says, those who love, much is forgiven. But those who love little, little is forgiven. So it really gives us some incentive to learn how to love, learn how to be devotional, learn how to give our hearts to God. But then, how? How? I don't know about you, but when I actually introspect and I try to feel my heart, it feels as if it's splintered into 1,000 pieces, being drugged in a multitude of desires. How can we reclaim that heart so we can offer it back to God? There's some really simple things. And ultimately, this is a personal experience and one that you'll have to find your own divine romance, the dance of your own heart with the infinite. But silence is one of the greatest ways of reclaiming your own heart. Be silent. Be still. This, I mean in many ways. I mean, find time to be silent. We're so outward in our daily lives. Find time to be inward, be alone. But I also mean in our own desires, in our thoughts, in our hearts, how frequently we're projecting our emotions out onto the world, onto other people, but how rarely can we actually calm our hearts and be still, be silent. And it's in those moments of silence, that's what true meditation is, isn't it? That moment when your heart becomes still and the mind is receptive, that's true meditation. That's when we feel God coming to the temple of our hearts. And that's how we'll learn to love God, is by simply being still, being silent, being receptive. Chanting is, of course, an incredibly powerful tool. I'm so happy that we got to chant so much today. It was an unexpected joy. I think we chanted for about an hour already today. And I encourage everyone, take a chant that speaks to you and really mean business with it. Yogananda said to take one of his chants and to chant it endlessly until God responds to you. And that he imbued every chant with a specific vibratory power that would give you a direct experience of God in a specific way. And then, another added incentive, he says that once you have experienced the power of these chants, whenever you chant it, it will immediately draw you back into that state of consciousness. So it will become your mystic key, your little portal back into that divine experience of love or of compassion or of guidance or whatever it may be. And so I really encourage you to try taking a chant. And if you can, try chanting it morning, day, and night. See if you can, keep it humming in the back of your head while you're working, while you're driving in your car, while you're sleeping. Because this will give your heart that fixity of purpose. It will give you something to focus on. There's a great example of this that I think is really charming. In India, I'm told, again, I haven't gone and had long, in-depth conversations and techniques of training elephants, but I'm told that elephant trainers in India, when they have to bring an elephant through a marketplace, they give him a stick to hold. And they've trained the elephant to hold up the stick with his trunk, like very proudly. Give him something to do, because apparently, and again, it makes sense. Apparently, if you take an elephant through a crowded marketplace with nothing in his trunk, he starts wrecking havoc left and right. Yeah, he's a curious little guy, or curious biggest mammal on the earth guy. But our minds, our hearts are very much like that. When we don't have something to do, we just start kind of picking up anything and everything that comes in our way. And frankly, most everything that we happen to just pick up off the wayside of this world is trouble. And so let the chant be the stick that you hold on to proudly as the elephant of your heart and mind marches through the crowded marketplace of your daily life. It's a very powerful practice. I recently have been very inspired to just take the practice of chanting Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru. It's incredibly simple. It's almost monotonous at times. But Swami Kriyananda recommended it very strongly. And he said that just chanting this mantra, chanting to the Guru constantly, he said you will be blown away at how much it transforms your consciousness. And I thought that was quite a testimony, so I'm giving it a shot. And all I can say right now is I am enjoying it thoroughly. And the reason why, at least in my experience so far, is that it has been incredibly practical for me. It's not that I've chanted Om Guru, 108 times, 12 times a day, and that's the magic number, and bam, I go into the light. But what it has given me is a very practical tool to keep my heart out of the muck. And by the muck, I mean all those things that are constantly drawing my heart down into despair, into delusion, into mistakes, into all the things that I know I shouldn't be drawn into. And it keeps my mind, it keeps my heart on God and Guru. Because we all have karma. We all have tests and difficulties that will come and assault us. You might think, I've been such a good-natured person, why are all these things coming to me? Well, it's just your karma, just accept it and move forward. But one of the great tools you can do to help you in that acceptance and in moving forward is just chant God's name in whatever way is helpful to you. It becomes like an armor. Because as one of Yogananda's disciples said, I think it was Gyanamata, and maybe someone can help me, and she said, what matters to you, what happens to you doesn't matter. What you become through it matters. And so when obstacles come, when trials shriek, if you can hang on to the constant japa of your Om Guru, or Om Divine Mother, Om Love, Om Divine Consciousness, whatever it is, then those things will come. But so be it, let them come. But through them you will become a greater and greater magnet of your Guru's consciousness, of divine joy, of upliftment, of non-attachment. And like I said, from my own life, it has given me great solace, because though tests and trials have shrieked and tried to squash me flat, I've been able to just hold to my mantra. Because sometimes there are things we can't overcome. There are obstacles that come that we feel we're incapable of overcoming, or there are, we're accused of doing things that we haven't done and we can't defend ourselves, or whatever it may be. But you can always be in control of your own consciousness. You can always be in control of your own mind. And let's all make that effort, that sincere effort to change ourselves. Because as Sri Yukteswar said, change yourself, or I don't know if he said it, but change yourself and you've changed the world. Here it is. Sri Yukteswar said, the man of true God realization changes the very universe through the subtle power of his magnetism. So, pay attention constantly. Where is your heart? Where is your feeling nature? And remember that your feeling nature, just like your thoughts, even more so than your words, even more so than your activity, will determine your direction of development. If your heart is fixed in joy, if your heart is fixed on God, you will move that way, even if the world conspires against you. There's a beautiful story that I'll close with that illustrates that God always responds to sincere devotion. And I actually heard this story this morning, and it's the first time I've heard it, so if anybody happens to know it, and I'm telling it incorrectly, you can fill us in on the details in a moment. But this is the story of the origin of the Mahamritam Jaya mantra, which is what we chant, the second mantra we chant at the fire ceremony. And apparently, this origin of this mantra occurred, many thousands of years ago in a higher age when two very advanced rishis who had lived a long and devoted life to God decided that they together wanted a child, but they couldn't conceive. And so they did intense meditation, intense devotional practices to the Lord Shiva. Then after, some length of time, Shiva appeared. And he said, I have heard your prayers and I have felt your devotion, and now I'm here to offer you a boon. Ask of me whatever you will. And so they say, well, Lord Shiva, we would really love a child. Would you please bless us that we may bear a child? And Shiva says, unfortunately, because of your karma, you cannot bear a child as most would. But I will intercede on your behalf because you have performed these incredible austerities. And so, but I can only intercede part of the karma. So I give you two options. Either you may have a child who will live a long, very long and healthy life. He'll live to be several hundred years old, but he will be very dull-minded and he will not have much to offer the world. Or you may have a child who will reflect your devotion, your sincere love of God. He will be a great soul and will help many, but he will die when he is 17 years old. Which would you prefer? And the rishis decide, we'll take the son who lives for a short duration but has a good life. So Shiva said, let it be so. And he blesses them. So they have this child. The son grows up. He is everything that Shiva said he would be. He's charming. He's radiant. He's a friend to all. He's a great yogi. He's a lover of God. And on his 16th birthday, he notices that his mother starts weeping all the time, and she won't tell him why. And so being an intelligent young man, he presses her until finally she tells him the story of his conception and how he's destined to die at the year's end. And so seeing his parents so entrenched in grief at the thought of his coming passing, he decides that he's going to call upon Lord Shiva, because in India, Shiva is known as like the most compassionate form of God, that he is the embodiment of mercy itself. And so he sits down and he proceeds to meditate for the entire rest of the year, which is not unheard of in higher yugas, apparently. And he meditates deeply, and during his meditation, the Mahamritam Jaya mantra comes to him from the ether, and that becomes his meditation. He becomes vibrating. He becomes an embodiment of this mantra, to Shiva, Om Triambakam, three-eyed one. And he meditates in this way all year long. And then finally, on his 17th birthday, he feels a presence come to disturb his meditation. And he opens his eyes, and it is Yama, the god of death himself. And Yama says, my son, I'm here to take you. It's time to go. And the boy says, well, Sri Yama, I appreciate that you have your dharma to do, and that it is my time to die. However, I am meditating. And I am giving my love to God. So you may try and take me, but I'm going to continue to offer Shiva my love, my devotion. You do your dharma, and I will do mine. And Yama says, well, very well. And so the young man closes his eyes again, and he begins, again, being engrossed with his heart's love thinking only of Shiva. And Yama comes and he's going to drag this guy to the astral world and take him out of his body, and he won't move. And so Yama, this god of death, tries everything. He unleashes all of his weapons until finally, at last, he takes his most powerful weapon, a whip, and he wraps it around the boy's neck, and he's going to drag this boy down out of the world into, he's going to kill him and take him to the afterlife. And the boy feels this weapon pulling him, and he realizes that he's not strong enough to resist it, but still he just says, Shiva, your will be done. I love you alone. And in that moment, of course, Shiva appears. And Shiva, with his trident, severs the whip that's pulling the boy to death and intercedes and saves him. But then at this point, I thought it was so charming that Yama says, Shiva, what have you done? I'm here to do my job. You yourself said that after 17 years you should die, and I'm here to make sure that he does. So why? Why have you stopped me from doing my dharma? And Lord Shiva's response, I thought was so beautiful. He said, when sincere love implores me, even my own rules have to be cast away. And so this is, I think, a true allegory, that there are rules that govern the universe. There are laws of karma and reincarnation. But even in the Bhagavad Gita, the character who slays karma is symbolic of the heart's devotion. Because it's that, as Christ said, if you love much, much is forgiven. So let's focus on loving. Love your friends, love your family, love your wife, love your husband, love your neighbor, love God.